Did you ever wonder how an inmate with no money and no power, who only takes and never gives, can get a woman to get herself into trouble and go to prison for him? I'm going to tell you how you can profit from my over 30 years experience in a super maximum prison and law enforcement. I'm going to tell you how you can get the same training the U.S. government gives to federal prisoners to teach them to subvert honest, hard-working people into throwing their lives and their careers away. About now, you're asking yourself, why the hell would the American taxpayer fund training for criminals to destroy other people's lives? I have wondered this myself for years. I would not have believed it possible if I had not personally witnessed it myself. Let me say right here that I must keep my identity hidden for myself and my family's safety. There are persons who have threatened my freedom and to physically harm me if I revealed these secrets. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. This is my hobby and passion, to tell you the hidden secrets of what goes on behind prison walls. You can show me that you're grateful by hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel. That's all I want from you. The training and techniques I'm going to reveal work. I've seen examples of this in my coworkers that I've worked with for decades. I have known them to be honest, hardworking, dedicated people. They were given security clearances and passed background investigations. The most recent example that I am personally acquainted with is the case of a correctional officer I've known for over 10 years, Renee D. Strauss. And she had a federal case filed on her on the 17th of March 2016, number 16-40013-JPG. Look it up for yourself in the Southern District of Illinois. The facts of the case are simple. Ms. Strauss gave several inmates cell phones to conduct criminal activities while they were in prison. Contraband that they aren't allowed to have while incarcerated, and sex. For this, she was given a monetary fine, a jail sentence, and will serve some parole time. Miss Strauss was a hard-boiled prison guard, not what you would call a naive, shirking violet. She spent years around some of America's most hardcore criminals. The leaders of prison gangs, mafia wise guys, scam artists who stole millions of dollars, drug dealers from the worst ghettos in the United States. She was in her early 40s and reasonably attractive. She could have invited most single men home with her, and they probably would have went. She had a good paying job, a kind and loving family, every reason to stay on the straight and narrow, and not a single one to get off the path. A guy named Robert Greene wrote 2 books that were instrumental in the subversion of Miss Strauss, and hundreds of others, maybe even thousands. These books, they're available for every federal inmate to borrow at no cost. You can go to your local public library and borrow the very same books for free. They are the 48 Laws of Power and the Art of Seduction. Both of these books are read by most, if not all, federal inmates at the Supermax USP Marion. They are not restricted, and they're available to all. I had a supervisor give me a copy of both of these books and recommend that I read them. He said it might keep me out of a prisoner's striped uniform, and I'm very grateful that he did. These 2 books teach the basics of human psychology, what people want, and the different personality types and the ways to subvert them. And examples of each kind of personality are given in each book. Seduction, it's not always having to do with sex. People can be seduced with power, money, prestige, or even just the appearance of power. Power can be obtained with money, violence, or the threats of violence, or even flattery. In a real-life example of Miss Strauss, it took a team of inmates working under a leader to compromise the hard-boiled guard. The first step was to have over a dozen inmates ask her questions that seemed innocent taken separately. You have kids? Did your house get damaged in the recent storm we had? Prisoners in a Supermax prison have long sentences to serve. If it takes a year or two of careful probing to get the information that they need, then so be it. The next step is for a small committee of inmates to convene to analyze the collected intelligence. The same system used by our CIA is used by the group of prisoners to determine the personality type of the target and the associated weaknesses inherent to that type. They and I know that every person has a weakness that can be used against them as a weapon. Finally, the select committee maps out a flexible plan that details the goals, people, and materials needed. Ms. Strauss was then bombarded with targeted stress. A few angry, uncooperative inmates, but one or two kind and sympathetic inmates who seemed to really connect on a personal level with her. They love to make her life easy and will do anything she asks of them. After months of this, they earn her trust and ask her for very small favors. Not breaking any rules, but getting close to the line. Something like, "My dear old mother is sick, and she doesn't have much money since my father died. You know how bad it is when a parent dies. I'm worried. Could you please use your computer and see if the recent storm in Texas flooded the street that my mother lives on?" He used the months of sucking up and friendly relations with her to ask her for this tiny little favor. He has been so supportive and offered her sympathy to her problems. He would do anything she asked of him. He'd never tell on her for bending so small a rule. Then there's another favor, and another, and another. Each building on the other, according to the plan that has been mapped out months before by the committee. Finally, there comes the big demand. I want a cell phone, a clear violation of the law that could land her in jail. She refuses. He reminds her of all the other favors that broke the rules. Others were fired for less. So she comes across with the cell phones. Later, the demand is for sex for him and just a few others. In her case, the criminal stuff lasted only about 3 or 4 months before she got caught. Other inmates wanted in on the action, but not enough girl to go around, so an inmate informs on the situation to get a transfer or some other benefit for himself. This type of story happens over and over again. Our prison is out of control because of the lack of control. Our employees are told over and over again they are prepared to deal with the manipulative personalities found in prison. It is not true. The administration is duped into believing that they know best because they have a diploma on the wall. The modern university education gives graduates the idea that they are prepared for the real world better than anybody else. You see, on our campuses today, protests against anything that disagrees with the narrative that to graduate makes you an elite leader. To make matters worse, the courts and legislatures place restrictions on our prisons and forces them to allow inmates access to so-called educational materials. They use the good intentions of our institutions and pervert them into levers to pry open the chinks of the armor of our public servants. It is a misconception that giving an inmate a life sentence protects the public. This is not true. Prisoners have escaped from some of the most secure facilities on the planet. They subvert prison employees. I've heard lifers tell me that their goal is to rape and kill as many people as possible before they die in prison. After all, we provide free education in our prisons to destroy the lives of the innocent. Why not use the education to that end?